Okay, good evening, everybody. My name's Finn. I work for Aberystwyth University. I also have colleagues with me from the University of Salford and the University of Reading. Today's session is about, can I afford to go to university? So we're going to be doing a very brief presentation at the start, and then there will be opportunity for questions at the end afterwards. I also have a number of ambassadors from the different universities who are current students who will also be able to answer any questions. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to be very strict with keeping to the hour. So obviously, if you do have any questions, you should be able to see a question box just on the right-hand side. My colleague Edit has actually just put a message in it so that people should be able to see it. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in there. Please obviously do be aware we're not going to disrupt the presentation to answer the questions. We'll wait until the question points during the presentation to answer them. Also, if we do run out of time at the end, we will be putting different email addresses for you to drop questions to in the chat box again, and you will all receive a recording of this presentation and this session and the questions that we answer, as well as some helpful links in an email tomorrow evening, exactly 24 hours after this. But that is everything from the housekeeping from me. I hope this session is beneficial for you. I'm going to get started, but yeah, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. But I hope everyone enjoys. So, like I said, this session is about, can I afford to go to university? Now, I'm hoping that most of you are considering university as an option, and you are here to get some information about how you can go about financing it. So the basics, student finance, or how you pay for your university tuition and your university lifestyle, comes from a number of different means. The main two are your tuition fee loan and your maintenance or your living loan. Okay. Now, these two loans are exactly what they say on the tin. They are loans, so they do need to be repaid. But something we will be highlighting in this session is other means of financial support that may be available to you. So just to go over tuition fee loan and maintenance loan quickly, like I said, these are paid for and applied for on your main student finance application. So what I would say is, if you haven't started looking into student finance as of yet, and whether you're eligible for it, which the majority of students will be, unless they're an international student, and even then there may be some means available to them, then I would suggest having a look on the student finance website to find out a little bit more. But to give you a brief overview, your tuition fee loan, at the moment, tuition fees can be charged up to £9,250 per year. Okay, the majority of universities or higher education providers will be charging that maximum amount, but obviously when you're looking at universities, do be aware to look at how much each year fee is, just to make sure you're applying for the correct amount. There are absolutely no upfront costs. The tuition fee loan, once you've made your application to student finance, it will be paid on your behalf by student finance directly to the university. So you don't have to have £9,000 sitting in your bank account in order to pay for your fees up front. Student finance will do that for you. Like I said, you apply for your tuition fee loan to cover this cost. Now, this is non-means tested, so it's not based on your household income. Some of you may have already heard of this term, this means tested and non-means tested, but essentially your tuition fee loan is literally just goes off whatever the university is charging at the time. Like I said, it's paid directly to the university. But you do have to apply for it each year in case there is a change to the cost of your tuition fees. So for example, if you go on a study abroad year, or you take a year placement or industrial placement, or working in employment for a year, and there might be a slightly different cost. So do be aware, you do need to action your student finance each year, and don't leave this late, because it can affect your loan payments to the university, and then obviously the university is going to come to you and say, why haven't we received your tuition fees? Now, your maintenance loan depends on a few different factors. It depends on where you live, within the UK, and also whether you live at home or you have are living independently, so say in halls of residence or in privately rented accommodation, or so on and so forth. So these are the key areas. The other factor that they take in is London waiting. So if you're studying in London away from home, so if you're living at home and you're originally from London, you wouldn't be eligible for this. But if you're studying in London away from home, you will receive potentially be entitled to a slightly different fee. So at the moment, the maximum you could receive if you're living at home in your parental home or your current home is £8,171 per year. If you're living away from home outside of London, the maximum is £9,706 per year. And if you're living in London away from home, the maximum you would receive in terms of also including London waiting is £12,667 per year. Okay. Now, these loans will not be paid to you in one lump sum. So if you are thinking that in September you're going to receive thousands of pounds into your account, that won't be the case. They split them into 3 payments, typically at the start of your autumn term, after the Christmas break, and then in the spring term, so after Easter holidays. Okay, so they'll be split into 3 terms. Now, with your maintenance living loan, it's completely up to you how you budget it, and hopefully later in this presentation we'll give you some things to consider when you're making your budget. Now, the other thing to factor in with the maintenance living loan is it is based on household income. So your current household income does affect how much you will be entitled to. So the higher your household income, the less maintenance living loan you would be entitled to. What I would say is Student Finance have a really great maintenance loan calculator on their website. So what I would definitely suggest doing at some point in the near future is going onto that calculator and putting in some rough figures of what your current household income is, and then seeing how much you personally would be entitled to, because it is an individual amount. It depends on your own individual calculations, your own individual household income. So you need to be aware of your individual circumstance, essentially. Now, just to give you some visual idea, if your household income is under £25,000 per year, or is at that base level, you would receive the full amount, so that at least £8,171 per year, depending on where you're living. As it goes up, as you can see, the amount you would be entitled to decreases. So if your household income is £45,000 per year, if you were living at home, the amount you'd be entitled to would be £5,420 per year. Okay, and like I said, that would be split over 3 payment cycles. Now, it is an investment, so what a lot of students don't consider is what else their tuition fees pay for. So alongside your teaching, things like the resources available to you, so like the library, the recreational sports grounds, the different facilities, labs, art studios, whatever it may be that you're applying for, all of these are funded within your Student Finance tuition fee loan. Okay, and your main so it is worthwhile considering how you can benefit from all of these different resources and facilities while you're at the university, because ultimately, whether you choose to use it or not, you have paid to have that opportunity to be able to access it. Okay, so I always try and mention to students that they can access all of the different facilities for free, and when you get out into the working world, that is potentially not an option to have such specialist facilities, the libraries that you have available at different universities, the expertise of the different academics, and so on and so forth. So it's very much important for you to consider making the most of every opportunity. Now, going on about where to apply, I'm going to go over this really quickly because this is just some key information. Student Finance typically opens late January, early February. This year it was the 2nd of February. Okay, now I would always advise submitting your UCAS application as soon as possible. Okay, you don't have to have a confirmed place to apply. Now, the reason I suggest applying early is because you do have to supply evidence of your sort of household income and so on and so forth, your right to study in the UK and so on and so forth. So that obviously takes a lot of time, and you don't want to be leaving it to the last minute in order to be able to make your application, because then that can put a delay on when you receive your payments. So apply as soon as possible. And what we would always suggest, if you don't have a confirmed place or you don't know what is going to be your firm choice university as of yet, just put the one that you think will be your firm choice. You can always amend your application later. You can amend it literally up to sort of the week before you go, or you can amend it at any time, but just put a university down. Don't rush your application. Like I said, you will need to put in different evidence, so make sure you're ticking all of the boxes so that it's not sent back to you and that, again, there's no delays in them requesting more information. It does rely on a number of people, so you will need to be speaking to the other people that you live in the house with who contribute to the household income. So make them aware when you're going to be starting your student finance application as well. The deadline to ensure that you will receive your student finance by the September when you start your course is typically early May, okay? But it will always be on your application form when you need to have submitted it by, but do be aware of when that deadline is, because if you miss that deadline, you can't be sure that you will receive it for when you start your course. So just be aware of that. If you do have any issues, get in touch with Student Finance. They're brilliant. They're typically open 8 AM to 8 PM most days, so they're very, very accessible. Now, to talk a little bit about where you would spend the money. Ultimately, it is your money, so your maintenance living loan is your money, and you can receive income from a variety of different places. So some students will rely solely on their students' finance maintenance loan. Others will think about getting a part-time job as well. Others may have contributions made by parents or financial supporters or guardians. And then you've got to weigh up where you're spending that money, so you're outgoing. So before you go off to university, it's worthwhile considering what you need to spend your money on and what you need to be budgeting for. Okay, now when I speak to the majority of students, they always go, okay, well, my rent, maybe traveling back and forth to university or to home if I've moved away. Food is a big one. My social life, because it's an important part of your life. And then emergencies, so if there's anything that you haven't factored in. But they do also miss out considering a number of other financial income that they could potentially receive and other outgoings they need to consider. So there is quite a list that you could have income through. So obviously you'll have your maintenance loan, and as well as potentially having a part-time job, support from parents or guardians. You can also make applications for bursaries and scholarships, both through government schemes and also through university schemes. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next couple of slides. Some students go with sponsorship or even with savings that they've prepared for going to university. But some other things to consider are things like other essentials, so like cleaning products, shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, toiletries. Technical equipment also can be very important. So for example, if you need a laptop, tablet, anything to support your studies, you may need additional tech. Further books, equipment, field trip resources. So there's lots of other things to factor in. So I would always say be prepared in advance for all eventualities, rather than getting there and thinking, oh, I can't take that opportunity because I can't afford it. So budgeting accordingly, and then getting a part-time job or a scholarship or savings in order to fund those things can be really important. So to talk a little bit about the other support. Now, the government do have a number of different government scholarships and also bursaries. So the big three that will be mentioned are the Disabled Student Allowance, the NHS bursary, and also the social work bursary. Now, these, the NHS bursary and the social work bursary are subject specific. So if you're doing an NHS related course, so things like nursing, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, you may be entitled to that, but that is a figure that you will receive each year to support your studies. Exactly the same with a social work bursary. If you're studying for a social work degree, you will be entitled to that bursary again to support your studies and your placement. So if you are thinking about those things, look at how you can apply for those bursaries. One that is non-subject specific is the disabled student allowance, and this is for any student who may have additional need, whether it be a learning need or a disability. So this is where they can access additional funding to have different potential technical support or staffing support, or to be honest, the list is endless for the disabled student allowance. So it's not a set amount that you would potentially receive each year. It would be something that you would be granted to fund additional resources or one-to-one support or extra exam time. So if you do have some sort of learning need or you have a learning support plan at the moment, then I would definitely look into these different factors. Or if you think actually it's something you are not receiving at the moment, but you may want to access when you get to university, get in touch with the student support at the universities that you're applying for, and they will be able to provide you with ample information. Now, you also could potentially have university-specific scholarships. Now, again, the list of these is endless, but these are some ideas of some of the different options that you may be able to apply for. So, for example, some universities do entrance exams and merit awards. You have academic excellence scholarships, which is where you may have achieved very high grades in your A-levels or your BTECs or whatever you're currently studying, and may be entitled to an amount of money because of that achievement. You may have subject-specific awards. So again, if you're doing a particular subject, there may be different awards that you may have available to you. There can also be different financial opportunities for anyone who is a care leaver or a young carer or an estranged student. And there also could potentially be sports scholarships at the universities that you're applying to. Now, this is just a general list. Universities may have more, they may have less scholarship and bursary opportunities. What I would say with bursaries and scholarships, you don't have to have just apply for one. You can apply for as many as you are eligible for. So they can be a really good opportunity to support your financial needs while at university. So if you're sitting here thinking, well, I think I might be entitled to both an academic excellence scholarship and a sports scholarship, then look into how you apply for them. They will be individual to each university, exactly the same as the government bursaries and scholarships are individual to the government sort of application scheme for those bursaries. So make sure that you're looking at the universities that you are applying to find out how you go about making those applications. Don't just assume that you will receive them. I made that mistake and missed out on a pot of money from a scholarship that I didn't realise I had to apply for. So up to this point, has anyone got any questions? I don't think there's any in the question box at the moment. No, okay, right, I'm going to move forward. If anyone does have any questions as we're going through, then please do put them in the chat box. So now to talk a little bit more about budgeting. Now, budgeting is probably going to be the biggest consideration for you after you have decided on the university and the course that you're applying for. Once you've done your UCAS application and you've submitted your student finance application, once you know how much you are entitled to each term and over the course of the year, I would say the next big thing to consider is how you're going to budget this, okay? Now, some key tips to consider are thinking about, and these may seem obvious, but it is important and they will benefit you in the long run. So short date versus long date. You would not believe how many students go to university and buy everything fresh to start off with and then spend a lot of money on it, and within a week it's all gone off. So when you're doing your shopping, considering short date versus long date. Also considering things like ingredient-led cooking rather than ready-made. You would not believe how many students think that they can solely live on takeaways. And I would be lying if I said that I had never had a takeaway when I was a student, but actually it can be a lot cheaper to make things yourself and batch cook with ingredients. So weighing up those options. Also quantity versus quality, and also branded versus unbranded. So again, you may be used to eating branded food and branded toiletries and so on and so forth while you are living at home. Your household income may be slightly higher than what your budget will be when you're at university. So weighing up those options. Also, don't be hooked into things like buy one get one free, especially if it's something that's sort of fresh produce and is essentially just going to go to waste. Bulk buying versus individualness. So again, a lot of students will potentially consider going to university. They will just buy as and when, but actually again, it could be a lot cheaper to bulk buy and do a big shop at the start of term, and then just add to it as and when you need it throughout the term. Yeah, and also weighing up what is convenient, if there's any decent discounts around the area, and also shopping around. The majority of students will shop at multiple different shops in order to get the best prices. So again, weighing up those options as well, and how convenient the university location is to be able to support that is really important. Some other big things to consider are things like no spend days, and potentially doing surveys that give you financial rewards. That can be a really very easy and non-cost way of making a bit of money. Also signing up for cashback sites. A rail card, particularly if you're going to be getting the train a lot to get to uni or to get back home from university, that will save you ample amount, as well as booking in advance. Using on-campus facilities, so for example, rather than buying a printer and needing to replace ink, using printers on campus can save you a lot of money, but that's just an example. There's a lot of different examples for that one. Downloading free software to your tech. So the majority of universities, if not all, will supply students with Microsoft programs for free, and other different software, so bag into that. So there's a lot of different money saving things that if you go in straight away doing them, they will really benefit you in the long run. Now, really quickly to go over repayments, because your tuition fee and your maintenance loan will require you to repay. Okay. Now, when you are submitting your repayments, your maintenance loan and your tuition fees will be combined. So when you receive the sort of statement from student finance at the end of the year, they will have combined the two figures. So don't be scared by that you're going to receive two massive figures. Now, the repayment that you make will be 9% of a certain amount over a certain figure. So at the moment, the repayment cap is £27,750 per year. Okay, so once you hit that amount, you will start repaying your student finance loans. Before you hit that amount, or if you ever drop below that amount, you will not be repaying. Okay, so you can see here, if you're earning £30,000 a year before tax, the approximate monthly repayment amount will be £20. Okay, as you are earning more, it will be slightly more each month, but it's always relative to what you are earning. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how much you could be paying. This is a payslip for someone who is earning £31,000 per year. So you can see their basic salary is just over £2,500 per month. Okay, now you do need to take into different deductions, so things like tax, national insurance, if they're making pension contributions, and also student loans. So you can see here for this student whose annual income before tax is £31,000 per year, they are paying £27 per month. And this is how you will receive it. It will just come out of your payslip. Okay, it's only if you're self-employed and paying yourself essentially, and not giving yourself a payslip, that you will need to set up a repayment plan. But you can see, even with all of those deductions, the net payment is £1,910.99 per year. Okay, so it's not anything to be scared of with the repayments. Some other things to consider is your repayment level and the amount you're repaying is dependent on your income, not on the amount that you have loaned. You don't start repaying until you are earning over the £27,000 roughly threshold, and you repay 9% of anything over that threshold, okay? It's taken directly at the source, so exactly like income tax and national insurance, it's taken directly from your pay slips. You don't have to worry about setting up repayment plans, like I said, unless obviously you move abroad or you are self-employed. Now, interest does accumulate from when your initial payment is paid to you at university, but again, it's a minimal amount. It does depend on where you are in the cycle, but if you want to look into that a little bit more, I would suggest going on the Student Finance website. The other thing to be aware of with repayments is you will never start repaying until the April after you graduate, okay? So they typically will give you a grace period to be able to get a job and sort of get yourself on your feet after you graduate before they start taking repayments. And no matter how much is outstanding or written, it is completely written off after 30 years. So even if you've paid 10% of how much you loaned or 85% or whatever you have repaid, whatever is outstanding will be written off after 30 years if you haven't repaid it at that point. Okay. That is it from me. I appreciate that was a very much a whistle-stop tour. If you do have any questions, please pop them in the question box on the side, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions and pass them on to my colleagues who are here from the different universities and also from the student ambassador's perspective. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask my colleagues to come on the webcam. And I'm going to pass over to Louise, who's going to lead the Q&A.
Hi everyone, thanks so much Finn, that was really great. We have had a few questions in on the question box, so I'm going to ask the other members of staff and student ambassadors to just pop their webcams on now, and then I'm going to direct the questions to whoever I think is best posed to answer them. So yeah, we have had quite a few questions in, which is really great. But before we go through that, I'm just going to get everyone to introduce themselves. Just if you could say your name, what university you're from, and sort of what you do. So if I start, so my name's Louise and I work for the University of Reading. I'm the Student Recruitment and Outreach Officer for London, so I specifically work in London, but I also do a lot of like virtual events and travel to Reading sometimes as well. Akash, you're the next person on my screen if you want to go next.
Hello everyone, a very good evening. I'm Akash, a first year computer science student, and I'm from India. So I'm international, so most of this stuff is like not applicable to me to some extent.
Cool, perfect, thank you. And Sophie, I'm gonna have to call you Sophie T because we've got two Sophies, but Sophie T, if you want to go next.
We have indeed. Thanks, Louise. Yeah, so I'm Sophie and I'm recruitment and outreach for the University of Salford and specifically for the South East of England.
Amazing, thank you. And then Ellen, you're the next one on my screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Ellen. I work as a student recruitment assistant for Aberystwyth and graduated from there last year. So yeah, pretty up to speed with the whole student finance thing. So yeah, let me know if you've got any questions.
Amazing, thank you. And then other Sophie as well.
Hi, yeah, I'm the other Sophie from the University of Salford. I'm a student, I'm in my final year and I study journalism.
Amazing, thanks so much. So we've got a range of both staff and students with us this evening, so do get your questions in. The kind of more technical based questions about things like repayments and funding are probably direct to staff, and then the questions that are more so about budgeting and what it's like managing your money at university are probably direct to the students. So the first question that I can see on my screen, Finn, if I can direct this one to you, we've had somebody ask, does the interest keep building up even if you're not repaying your loan back?
Yes, it does, which a lot of people find odd. But what I would say is that no matter how much interest they put on, after the 30-year threshold, it's written off. Yeah, it doesn't, even though they keep adding rolling interest on it, it's a fairly minimal amount for a loan. To be honest, most people who work within universities and have been to university say it's the best loan you'll ever apply for and receive. But yeah, it does continue rolling, but after the 30 years, if you haven't paid it off, it's written off.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it does. The interest keeps going every year, unfortunately. But as Finn says, it is written off. And I think the really important thing to remember is that your repayments are linked to how much you are earning, not how much you owe. So it doesn't matter if the interest keeps increasing, the amount that you repay back will always be linked to how much money you're earning. So if you start earning less money for whatever reason, maybe you get made redundant, take maternity or paternity leave, you change jobs, you don't have to keep repaying that same amount. It doesn't matter that the interest is being added, you will only ever repay in accordance with how much you're earning. The next question, Sophie T, if I could ask this one to you. Somebody has asked, does it negatively impact your credit score?
No, it definitely doesn't, and we're all sort of with you on this, and that's why we want to give you this reassurance, because we've all been to university ourselves, so we're paying it back, and it absolutely does not affect your credit score in a negative way. So please don't let that put you off. Yeah, just take our word for it, and obviously our student ambassadors that are here today, it really won't. And just obviously, as long as you manage your money effectively and you budget as best as you can stay on top of your own finances at university. You just have to be sensible about it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, it's kind of frustrating that it's called a loan. It would make more sense if it was called like a tax, because it doesn't work in the same way as a loan. You're not going to have bailiffs coming around your house, knocking at the door, taking your telly. It doesn't affect your credit score. It doesn't affect your ability to get a mortgage. The only thing that it would be considered as is another outgoing, and it's a very minimal amount every month in comparison to your overall salary. So it's nothing to worry about in terms of credit score, mortgages, things like that. It doesn't affect it at all. The next question I'm going to ask to one of our student ambassadors, Akash, if I could ask this one to you. Somebody has asked, how can I prepare for budgeting when I'm at university? Is there anything I can learn before I go?
So what I'd suggest, it's more of a personal experience rather than like a set rule. So like it's like minimalize your outdoor eatings. Like if you are a big fan of going outdoors and have eating on restaurants and whatnot, I'll say minimalize them as much as possible. Just go for like a friend's birthday, or maybe if it's a special occasion or anything, do that. But try and learn how to cook and get in the habit of actually refrigerating your food, because if you actually refrigerate them, you can use them for a longer period of time. And get in the habit of using more of like canned foods, and they're not like the best healthy option out there, but considering from a budgeting standpoint of view, if you actually have like canned beans, canned vegetables, or peas or anything, they do tend to have a longer shelf life than normal packed foods. So I would suggest that.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Really good tips. I think things like cooking and budgeting are things that you can practice as well before you go to university. Like get some recipes under your belt, practice cooking at home so that when you're at university, you're not tempted by Deliveroo and Uber Eats all the time and going out with your friends, because it is so tempting. But if you know that you can make some meals well, and that you can maybe bulk some meals, freeze them. Food can be a really big expense, so I think that's a really, really good tip. Okay, so I've got another screen here with all the questions on it, so if I keep looking away, that's why. If I could just ask the next question to Ellen. Somebody has asked, with household income, is this taken into consideration before or after tax when you're applying for your student finance?
Oh, that's a very good question. I believe it's before, because I think that's what it was when I was applying for it. I remember I was the first of my family to go to uni, so my parents and I were absolutely clueless and spent lots of time researching and doing lots of different things. So yeah, I believe it is before, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I think right. I think it is before, so it takes into consideration your household income, which also includes things like money that you get from savings, like dividends, and like rent if your family own like a property that they rent out. So it does include those things as well, and you do need to be honest when you're providing that evidence, and then student finance will calculate how much loan maintenance loan they will give you based on that income. But of course, everyone is eligible for the tuition fee loan. Somebody has asked a question about bursaries and scholarships. Finn, if I could ask this one to you. They've said, how do I know about bursaries and scholarships, and how do I apply to them?
Okay, so with bursaries and scholarships, they will typically, if they're a government bursary or scholarship, if there's something that like the NHS bursary or the social work bursary, typically universities will make applicants aware of them at applicant visit days and open days for you to have a little look into. There's way more information on the government websites for those type of scholarships and bursaries. So I'd always suggest having a little look on there to find out a bit more. Edit has put some links into the chat if you want to have a little look from there. With the university bursaries and scholarships, typically again at open days and applicant visit days, they will have different talks about different financial opportunities. But again, probably the best place to start is on the university websites. So, you know, each of us will have our university website, and on the web pages there will be access to information about all of the different scholarship and bursary opportunities and how you go about applying for them and starting that application process.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Finn mentioned, one of the best places to go is directly onto the university website, because every university offers different types of bursaries, scholarships and grants. It can be such a big range. Somebody's also asked, are they means tested? They all have different criteria. So sometimes they might be related to something like household income. Sometimes they might be related to your grades. They might be related to excellence in sports, music. It really, really does depend. So I would really encourage you to go directly onto the university websites and see what they offer. Each one as well might have a different application process. Some of them you might have to write like a statement as to why you deserve it. Some of them you might not have to apply to, but what you might need to do is click the consent to share box when you make your student finance application, so that the university is aware of your financial situation, and then they can give you a bursary in accordance with maybe like a hardship fund that they have, or like a household income means tested bursary that they have. I would really, really, really encourage you to research this with the universities that you're interested in, because it's really important to remember that scholarships, grants and bursaries is free money. You never have to pay it back. It's just free money that you might get in your bank account. You might get a discount in your tuition fees, a discount in your accommodation. You might get a laptop, all sorts of different things. Sometimes it's means tested, it depends. And it's not very often in life that you get free money. So do grab it if you can. Some examples that we have at Reading are things like our Reading bursary for students with household income of less than £27,000 a year. We have bursaries and scholarships for international students, for refugees and asylum seekers, lots of other things. So I would recommend checking out the websites. Sophie T, could you just tell us a little bit about some of the things that you might offer at Salford, like particularly the Inspire Fund as well?
Yeah, so first of all, obviously there is an NHS Learning Support Fund for any students that might be interested in going into the allied health profession courses. So, for example, you might be a student who wants to go into midwifery or nursing, occupational therapy, you know, prosthetics, orthotics, anything like that. And the great thing about it is you can apply to get £5,000 every year. And as we've said, the good thing about that is it is a grant and you don't have to pay it back, and it is on top of your other loans that you will qualify for as well. So just to be aware of that, but it is a separate application. So as my colleagues have mentioned, do make sure that you are applying for that separately, and there is loads more information about that on the government website. And yeah, at Salford specifically, because every university is different in terms of like various different scholarships that we offer, we do have something called our Inspire fund, which is unique to Salford in its name, but as I say, lots of universities will have their own version of that. And what that is it's £100 every academic year for our students. And you can spend that on, it might be electrical equipment or anything to go towards your university, really, to make your studies a little bit easier for you. I don't know if perhaps Sophie, you might want to just come in on this and maybe say how it was useful for you actually as a student at Salford.
Yeah, it's great. It's really easy for everyone to access that money as well. All you have to do is just register each year, which obviously you do to start university each year anyway. So just as soon as Salford Uni know that you're going to be in attendance, they give you a link to this shop. It's called the John Smith Student Store, and then the money's in your account and you can spend it on anything you need. So like I needed a really expensive law textbook for my course. So I was able to just get that with my Salford Inspire money. I didn't have to worry about spending my actual real money on it. My friend's a broadcast student. She needed like a tripod and a microphone to kind of go out and record with her phone. She was able to get that on there. And if you're from a low income household, you can actually get an extra £350 on Salford Inspire each year as well. So kind of you can benefit that way. But yeah, it's a really useful scheme that we have.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, we've had some other questions in about, well, we've actually had a lot of questions in, so I'm just going to go through all of them as they come in. Somebody has asked about extra income when you're at university. So we've spoken about scholarships and bursaries, but somebody mentioned part-time work. So Ellen, I was just wondering, did you work when you were at university? Like, what kind of advice would you give to someone who might be looking to work part-time while studying?
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Louise. So we've got a scheme in Aberystwyth called Aberworks, and I'm sure lots of unis have a similar one in place where we can employ our students to do lots of different jobs around the campus. The main kind of role we've got is being an ambassador, which is always really exciting, and where I kind of started my journey for working at the uni. We pay our students £9.50 an hour, and you're able to work up to 15 hours a week, which obviously makes sure that you've got still plenty of time to be able to do your academic work, but also enough time to earn some extra cash as well. I would definitely recommend going for it, and also depending on where you decide to study, there's normally lots of jobs available to students within the town or cities. We're quite a coastal location. We are literally, if you went any more west of Wales, you'd be in the Irish Sea. So we've got a lot of different job opportunities available in the town in the hospitality sector, and I'm sure that's the case wherever you are. But yeah, if you need some additional funds, or even if you just want to have some income that you're able to put into a savings account, then my advice is to, yes, definitely have a look at that, because normally, especially in your first and second years, you've got plenty of spare time to be able to do something useful with it.
Yeah, definitely. No, some great advice there. I think getting a part-time job as a student is a really good idea, like for the extra money and also for the extra experience for your CV when you graduate. So you might even choose to do something that might be related to your course or related to a field that you might want to go into in the future. There's often opportunities for like paid placements, internships, and you get quite a lot of time off in the holidays, or just working whilst you're studying as well. Working for your university can be a really good idea, like Ellen mentioned, because you can often the university will be, appreciate that you need to balance your studies with your work, and they will be able to be flexible with you. And often universities do employ students to do things like be student ambassadors, represent the university, maybe do admin work, maybe work in the bars and the cafes on campus. So that can be a really good idea as well, to approach the university first. They might even have a jobs board or a career centre where they advertise this. And some of our student ambassadors this evening, they work for the universities, so this is their part-time job as well. So I would definitely recommend something like that. Akash, I've got a question for you. We've got you mentioned that you're an international student. We've got a couple of international students here this evening, and some of them have asked, what's it like applying for student finance as an international student, and did you see any sort of scholarships when you were applying?
So according student finances as international students, I don't think any international, maybe different country. I'm from India, so I can only give you that perspective. So as an Indian international student, I was not applicable for any student finance, or if that you say. On the other hand, student scholarship are based on your A level or A level equivalent grades. So whatever grades, if you do very well in your A levels or any equivalent for that, you are applicable to. Even I have some of the international students have 100% scholarship, so they don't pay any money. They have like 100% free education. So yes, you are applicable, but they are, I think, on only yearly basis, if I'm correct. Like you get scholarship for like first year, and for the second year you have to reapply for those.
Yeah, perfect, amazing. We have got someone asked about specific scholarships for students from India as well, so that was really, really helpful. Thank you. For international students, I would really, really recommend going on the university website and looking at their international page as well. There's often a contact for the international team if you have any questions about student finance, because obviously it works differently for those that are international compared to UK students. Alongside scholarships and bursaries for UK students, most universities also do offer scholarships for international students. But again, it's important to remember that every university is different. So it's really important that you do your own research and see if the university does offer scholarships. As Akash mentioned, some universities will offer scholarships where you get money off your tuition or even free tuition if you succeed in your grades. So it's really, really important to do that research to see what you can receive. Okay, let's have a look at what other questions we've got in. Finn, if I could ask you a question about the disability fund. Somebody has asked, what kind of things would they fund? When I looked online at their website, it just said extra support needs, but what kind of things might this encompass?
Sorry, my computer won't go off mute then. So I have just been writing a message about this, so I will pop it in the chat as well. But essentially, it will always depend on what your personal needs are. So typically, if you are applying for disabled students allowance, you will need to provide evidence in forms of like doctor's notes or so on and so forth to prove your conditions or your needs, or it may be if you've got an additional learning need and you've got an educational psychologist report, you can supply that. What I would say is probably the best place to start is always going to the student support at the university that you're applying to, because they will have supported hundreds, if not thousands, of students who are in the same position of starting their application as you, and they will be able to advise you. Once you are granted your disabled students allowance, again, very similar to student finance application, make the application for it early, because again, you have to supply evidence. It does take time. So to ensure that it's all in place when you start in September, start the application early. Even before you've submitted your student finance application, some students will start it the September before to make sure everything's in place. So getting in touch with the student support at the universities they're applying for. So yeah, once you have been granted your DSA, you will have a needs assessment, and that's where you meet with an individual who's separate from the university. They work for the DSA, and they will go through all of the additional needs and the support that are available for you. So again, dependent on what additional needs you've got, it could be in the form of specialist equipment or resources or technical programs. So for example, I lived with a girl who was severely dyslexic, and she had dictaphone so she could speak into it and record her lectures to do her assignments. She had really cool technical programs so that she could do her essays through mind maps, and then it would start formulating the essays so that she wasn't overwhelmed with lots of words on the page. Obviously that's specific to her. You may be sat here thinking, well, I'm dyslexic and that wouldn't work for me, but this would work. So they could support things like that. If you've got physical needs, they can ensure that different support is put in there. If you require one-to-one support, they may be able to get support workers in place and fund that. So typically you don't receive the money personally to you, the DSA. However, obviously if you are employing a support worker of some kind, then you may be given the amount to cover their their fees and their wages. But it covers a vast array. It completely depends on your conditions and your needs, and it's all done. It's sort of an individual support plan that's put in place for you. I hope that answers it. But I will pop it in the
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks so much, Finn. I've just realised as well that you were typing it to the person, but thank you so much for saying it for the benefit of the whole audience as well, in case that applies to anyone else that's listening too. We've had a question in about related to halls of residence. Sophie, student ambassador Sophie, did you ever live in halls?
Yeah, so I lived in university halls in first year and then private student accommodation in second year, and now I'm just in like a normal person's flat.
Cool, amazing. So somebody's asked, how do halls of residence work? Does it include bills? Is it just for first year? Can I stay in the holidays? So Sophie, could you tell us a little bit about what your experience has been like and, sort of how the process works?
Yeah, so it worked pretty similarly in my accommodation in first and second year because it was a similar sort of like flat between a few students vibes. And the way that it worked for me personally was bills were included. So if it was so much per week, that was including like your electricity and your water and stuff. So that's really great. You didn't have to worry about like factoring that into your budgeting as well. And it was really convenient in my accommodation in first year, actually. They would line up the payments for the accommodation with when your student loan dropped. So say if you were getting a loan payment on like the 27th of January, on the 28th of January, you would pay for that term's accommodation. So the money just kind of came in and went straight back out again, and you knew how much you were left with for food and all of the other stuff that you want to spend your loan on. So that was really handy. I know sometimes there are like different ways that you can pay it. Sometimes you can do it weekly and stuff like that if you want to. So it's all pretty kind of interchangeable depending on your situation. But yeah, generally that's kind of the way that it worked, and it was the same in second year as well. The company that ran my student accommodation did that then too, which was great.
Amazing, yeah, thank you. So with regards to the kind of specifics of like what year can I have it, is it open in the holidays? Unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all rule. It does depend on the university. So some universities reserve halls of residence for just their first years, but many universities do reserve spaces for second and third years and further years as well, so that you can go back and live in halls if you want to. At Reading, we do reserve spaces for other year groups, so you can live in halls of residence the whole time you're at university if you want to. Again, most universities have halls of residence that have full year-long contracts, but it is important to check what the university offers. So for example, if you've maybe left local authority care or you're estranged from your parents, you might want to get a contract that is for the full year, and a lot of universities do offer that as well. So do make sure you do your research. One of the biggest expenses at university is your accommodation, because that's going to include your rent, usually includes your bills as well. So it can be the biggest place to save some money if you're willing to compromise a little bit on, having a single bed instead of a double bed, having a shared bathroom instead of an ensuite. It depends on your wants and your needs and your budget, but that is can be one of the biggest expenses when you're going to university if you're moving away from home. So do make sure you factor that into your budget, because it will be one of the biggest things. In terms of budget, we have had quite a few questions about budgeting, how to save money, what's your, how to manage your money at university. So I just thought we could go around to each person, and if I could ask you, what is your biggest money saving tip for while you're at university? So Akash, if we start with you, I know you gave your food one, which was really good, but do you have any other tips?
Stock up on like instant noodles as much as you can. They are the biggest money saving tool.
Love it, great. With the food tips again. So yeah, as Finn was mentioning as well in the presentation, instead of shopping at Sainsbury's, consider Lidl. I love Lidl. Like, you can get some great off-brand stuff there. Stock up on the noodles. Learn to cook some basic things so that you're not tempted to really splash out when you don't need to. Student Ambassador Sophie, how about you?
I'm going to stick on the food grocery theme and say meal plan, so that when you go and do your grocery shopping, you have like a shopping list to stick to. because I didn't do that when I first moved away to university, and it's very easy to get swayed by like all of the foods that are on offer and like all of the treats that you want but really don't need. So if you go in with a list, then you know as well that you're not going to be wasting food, which is always great, and you can do that with the people that you're living with too. So I was in like a flat of 5 people in first year. There's a lot of meals, you know, that you'll be able to find common ground that you all like, and then that's another way of saving money as well, because you can kind of batch cook or you can cook for everyone that you're living with. So yeah, meal plan, shopping list, do it all together.
Yeah. I like the idea of doing it all together as well, because it's a really nice way to make friends. Like if you're all cooking together, making a meal together, like often at university you meet people from like all different parts of the UK, all different parts of the world. You can share different cuisines together as well, and that can be a really nice way to make friends with the people that you live with. Ellen, how about you?
Yeah, well, on that point, that's a really good way to make friends, but also a really good way to find out what people's strengths and weaknesses are. Because I remember we nearly had a massive bust up in the first week when somebody was trying to cook a lasagna in our flat. So yeah, no, go for it, because it is a really good way of making friends. But for me, it would be to have a look at the scholarships, because I was really lucky. I was able to have 2 of Aberystwyth scholarships, which was the academic excellence, where if you have 3 A's at A level, the uni automatically give you £2,000 in your first year. And I also sat the entrance exams in the January of year 13 or year 2 in college, which meant that I was able to have an unconditional offer and also £1,000 in the first year. I saved all of that money, and last year I bought myself a new car. So, you know, if you're savvy with it, then you can obviously put it towards savings. Or I always felt really comfortable when I was in uni that if I had a disaster with a laptop and needed a new one, that I had that money in the bank rather than struggling to find, you know, cash basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to set aside that money for like kind of emergency things as well, and like maybe those slightly bigger expenses like a laptop can be really invaluable at uni. Sophie T, how about you?
Just on what Ellen said about being savvy, I know we've mentioned like student rail cards, but I think you can really be frugal as a student and you can benefit from so many discounts. So invest in a student card 100%. I think they're what, 30 quid, but you get so many savings over the whole time that you are a student. They are well worth it. So definitely do that. And as people have said, do bigger shops, shop in bigger supermarkets rather than like local convenience stores, because they charge a premium to students. So your money will go further if you can go a little bit further out and go to a supermarket. But yeah, definitely look for bargains. And you know, I'm a massive fan of like charity shops and car boot fairs, and you don't always have to go designer. You know, you do have to be a little bit savvy as a student. Yeah, so that would be my top tip.
Yeah, definitely great advice. You do benefit from so many student discounts, like not only from getting an NUS card, which I'd really recommend, but also you can get something like a 16 to 25 rail card. If you're living in like a university town, you might find that the buses are discounted if you're a student in that town, or sometimes even free. So do make sure you take advantage of all those little discounts, freebies, extra things that you can get when you're a student. Finn, how about you?
I think I've definitely drawn the short straw coming after the end. Like, very good suggestions. I would just mirror what everyone else is saying. The big thing for me is coming in and having a budget. So considering everything you need to pay for, and I mean everything. So like some people won't consider things like mobile phone bills, washing expenses, because as much as it's nice to live in halls of residence, you do typically have to pay in the halls of residence laundrettes to do your washing, and that obviously has a cost to it. So weighing up all of those different things so that you're just going into it prepared, and you know what you're going to need to pay out for, and then budgeting accordingly for it, and also not being scared to reevaluate your budget later on in the year if things are costing you slightly different, or you're spending more on something that you were expecting and less on something else. Just having an awareness of how much money you've got rather than living out of an overdraft, because I think in the media students are seen as living out of an overdraft, and it doesn't need to be the case. There's lots of funding and financial opportunity and support to get yourself on a really good footing, and if you get it right now, and at university, it will work for you for the long run across your life. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important to be budgeting because this might be the first time in your life that you've ever had to manage your own money. And the worst thing that you can do is just not look at your bank account and bury your head and just pretend that it's all fine and accidentally like rinse an overdraft. It's really important to be financially savvy and to be aware of exactly how much you're spending. Remember that you often only get your like maintenance loan paid into your account once a term. So it's got to last. So setting up a budget for all of those expenses is a really important thing to do. There's lots of apps that are really handy, like you could get a Monzo account that tracks your spending, so you can use those to your advantage as well. And if ever you are in a situation where you are worried about money, or you feel like you're like losing your grip on your budget and the expenses are getting too much, please do get in contact with your university. There are hardship funds available and there are advisors available to help you in those situations. So don't let it get worse, and don't sort of bury your head if you're ever in that situation. But with some proper budgeting and you know, taking all of our tips from this evening, hopefully you would never have to be in that situation. So we've just come up to 7. So thank you so much for listening to the presentation this evening. I hope you found it useful. Thanks so much to Finn for delivering. Thank you for all your brilliant questions that you've had in. We've had colleagues in the background as well doing some typed responses, so thanks so much. And thank you to all of our staff and students this evening as well for helping out with the Q&A. And if you do have any further questions, we will be circulating on an email our contact details, so don't hesitate to get in touch with the universities if there's anything else you'd like to find out. But thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to close the webinar now. When it ends, there will be a quick survey that pops up. If you could fill it in, that'd be amazing, as it helps us decide what to do in future webinars. So thanks, everyone. Thanks so much, and have a good evening.